What's going on, everybody? Hey, so today is May 2nd, 2024, and I went to work today, feeling a bit down and out. This day in particular is always kind of sucky to remember where we were 4 years ago. I have a great team at work, and so I'm gonna get through it, and it always seems to work better if I stay busy anyhow. So but it was brought to my attention by one of my friends there that perhaps some of you are joining us a little further into our journey, and that while I often talk about, like, oh yeah, this and that and whatever, about Chris's recovery, or hey, my husband's a patient in here, or whatever, that some people actually don't know what happened 4 years ago. So I'm going to give you the hopefully short story, and also I'm going to consider this my patient-friendly story, because there's a couple of different versions that I give whenever I talk to either the students, or if I'm talking to somebody who is a little more like me in my personal life. You might get the rated R or definitely mature audience version, and I'm going to do my best to stay on track. That being said, okay, so on May 2nd, 2020, a group of friends and my husband and I decided we were going to go on a motorcycle ride. We were going to go to Jerome, Arizona, and in order to do that, being in Mesa, we were going to ride up to Payson and then go from there up to 260, meet up with another part of our group, and then ride to Jerome. And we started out good, did well, got to Payson just fine and dandy, safe, probably about 10 of us on bikes, riding in a group. Got to Payson and gassed up and left. Got through most of that area, but we came to an area that was slowed down, and we were doing, I was looking at my speedometer on my bike, and it was saying like 8 miles an hour at some points. So I'd say we were probably averaging between like 8 to 15, 20 tops. If you're a motorcycle rider, or a motorcycle enthusiast or anything, if you've ever ridden a motorcycle, you know that going fast is dangerous, going slow is just as dangerous. So we were getting increasingly frustrated. I think I was sixth in a group of about 10 or so. And Chris was riding in front of me off to my right. I was against the double yellow, and just got to be so, it was tedious. It was a long bit of time, and I'm talking like a lot of time. And this particular vehicle that was slowing up traffic was a white pickup, and it was hauling a trailer, and the trailer had a bobcat, so like those mini loaders that you see landscapers use, was loaded up on the back. And at some point, one of us made the decision to pass. Passed the truck. They were trying to wave him over. This guy had literally been blowing past the signs that say slower traffic, move right. Like, he intentionally was not moving off to the side. And we had like probably a good mile of traffic behind us. So one of two things was going to happen that day. Either somebody was going to dump their bike because they were riding slow, and me being the least experienced rider on that ride probably that day, it probably would have been me dumping my bike. Or two, you're going to get hit by a distracted driver from the rear. People are always on their phones, texting on their phones, and we knew that probably we would get hit from behind. So a rider made the choice to pass. The driver of the truck moved off road, past the white lines, off to the side of the road, was still moving, but moved off to the right. And those first three bikes, so number four was the one that had moved up. Chris was number 5, I was number 6. So the first three were able to go. They passed, and I kind come back a little bit, and then Chris moved over to get into passing. And as Chris came up to about the driver's side, the back end of the pickup, the man swerved. He swerved back onto the road. And there wasn't enough screaming or honking or anything that I could have possibly done to make Chris aware. And Chris didn't really realize until there was a moment where I seen him kind of glance over, and his saddlebags on the side of his bike were hit by the back of that pickup truck. So the bike and he both moved towards, his head and the top of the bike moved towards the truck, and the wheels and the foot pegs of the bike caught the road and spun the bike off to the left, and Chris went under the trailer. Now, the trailer was a double axle trailer, so that means it has 2 sets of wheels. I watched the front wheels go over Chris's helmet, and I watched the back wheels go over the middle of his back. And he flew up, and he landed on the road in front of me. And I stopped and got off. I thought he was gone. And he was like face down, and his arm was under him, and he's like yelling. And I was like, oh, you're alive. Oh my God. Okay. You got something to work with here. Didn't move him. I said, nope, you can't roll over. And I called yelling for 911. And lots of people came to aid us pretty quickly. And then it seemed like not very soon after, there was a truck that came flying up the road, and it was, I believe, an off-duty fire captain that had already called in the accident. So I told him what happened, and he said, okay. And then I'm gonna skip some not so great parts of it. I did a lot of yelling. Let's be real. I did a lot of yelling at the guy. I was angry, and in my opinion, he swerved at him, and there was no way that you could not have heard Chris's bike. There was no way. So I yelled at the guy, and I came back, and I realized that Chris hadn't really moved his feet, and did a sloppy assessment, I guess, and realized that he couldn't feel anything from his shoulders below waist. Couldn't feel anything. And I told that gentleman, I said, we gotta hurry, like, I think he's paralyzed. And he said, okay, the helicopter's in the air. So we moved the bikes. Ambulance got there right around that time. They loaded him up trying to stabilize him. They asked me where to send him. I didn't know, so he went to Flagstaff. They had to clear the highway. They let everybody else start driving by before the officer there took me to Flagstaff. I went up there. That was during the pandemic. There was a shutdown, so I stood outside of the hospital for about 8 hours before we finally made the decision to go to the motel that we had around the corner. That Carl and Lorena had arranged a room for the night. And my cousin and one of my friends stayed with me at the hospital. Sean had started calling and was hitting the ground running for getting a GoFundMe started, so that was all happening rather quickly. Chris stayed in ICU for 6 days. We stayed up there pretty much the whole time, with the exception of coming down to get my kids on the Tuesday following it. Our accident happened on a Saturday, and I went and got my kids on Tuesday, and then we came back down on Friday. He was transported via transport that brought him down. It was a minivan. I thought I was paying for an ambulance, but it was a minivan. They brought him down. He went straight into Encompass Rehab, and that's where he stayed for the next 6 weeks. So the day of injuries, I was originally told a list of injuries, and then that ended up not being the full list. But he had a lot of damage, a lot. C6, C7, T1, fractures up in the low part of the neck, top of the shoulders, fractures there. He had fractures all along the spine, but the big ones were basically these ones up the top. middle of the back, he had a disc that was messed up there. And then L1, 2, and 3 in your low back were compression fractures. They were just really messed up. He broke 9 ribs. He broke his clavicle. He had punctured his lung, like he had a collapsed lung. Eventually, we'd find out that he had a brachial plexus injury, which is a nerve injury in the arm. He had a ton of road rash from the accident. And then, oh, and his shoulder blade. His shoulder blade was obliterated. Like, it was all in pieces, you know. And so, they were working to basically, he was in kidney failure. Like, his organs were shutting down. Like, he was in a really bad spot. So they had stabilized him in Flagstaff, got him moved down to the valley, did rehab with Encompass. Jason and Clay, those guys were awesome. PT team. I remember everybody's names when you're in PT. It's just the way it works. I wish I could remember every single person that worked with him to give proper thanks and all. Yeah. So after 6 weeks, they let him out because he needed a shoulder surgery. There was no way around it. He wasn't progressing in therapy because of his shoulder. So he was home with me for a couple weeks. That was really difficult. I had to learn how to give him injections. I had to learn how to turn him and transfer him and help him go to the bathroom and stay up around the clock pretty much to give him medications and dealing with what I had just saw happen and managing my own emotions and our kids and everything and just navigating the waters with the attorney stuff and everything else because we had gotten an attorney the very next day. Yeah, so shout out to the husband and wife law team. They took care of us. We weren't allowed to talk about a lot of this stuff in the first year, so that's why there's kind of a big gap in both Facebook memories, anything I share. It was like a lot of that started in year 2 after our lawsuit was over. Yeah. With the pandemic, there was a lot of delay in care, or proper care rather. So it was a good year before Chris was transferred out to San Diego. The VA in San Diego has a top-of-the-line, state-of-the-art spinal cord injury clinic. So that's where he was transferred to for his first annual evaluation. Prognosis really wasn't too great, but they were able to get him from being bedbound to really spending a lot of time for 6 weeks getting him where he needed to be. And of course that was about 6 to 8 months after his shoulder surgeries. So he had some home therapy to work on his shoulder. We had an OT that would come through to work on his shoulder. Really wasn't expected ever to be able to raise his arm over, maybe below shoulder level. Certainly was never expected or never predicted might be a better word. His prognosis was not good. But really a lot of that he hit the ground with trying hard. I mean the human spirit is something else. So and I certainly wasn't going to let him get through without doing therapy. So I believe aquatic therapy really was beneficial. That was about 1.5 years after injury when we finally had advocated strongly enough that the doctors in San Diego agreed with him that, yeah, let's try the water. And so they got him into water therapy. 1.5 years after injury, he finally was taking his first steps in the pool. Did that for a while. They didn't want to cover anymore, especially in the springtime whenever he had regressed from not having therapy for about 4 months. It's been a fight the entire time. It's been a fight all the time to get him what is best for him to recover. And I think that when they set their minds on the way that somebody is going to recover or what it's going to look like, it doesn't matter. Once their mind is set, you are going to constantly have to try to prove them wrong. And that's what Chris has done. And so on Tuesday this week, 2 days before his 4-year anniversary today, May 2nd, he walked around with a platform walker without us holding on to him. And yes, I cried. Because that's something that we were told no. I had a trauma surgeon laugh at me on the phone for even thinking that this person would ever walk again. He was like, "You're crazy. You're crazy if you think this man will ever walk again." Well, he's walking. Now what? So we have a whole new group of fun challenges and obstacles in front of us now. Even 4 years later, we're going to be fighting this next battle of what's next. Upgrading the braces, pushing for the walker for him to have at home that we asked for last year, that we showed them what he was doing last year with it and was doing half the work and not even having as much ability that he does now. So if you're ever my patient, I'm not the person to tell you no. I'm not the person that's going to say that that's not an option. I'm going to do my best, because that's what a good therapist does. We give you hope. We don't give you false hope. We push to those goals to make sure that you can do what you want to be able to do. And I wish that my mind was maybe in a better place at the time that everything had happened, that I could have advocated a little better in the beginning, but I was a hot mess. And I guess we were doing the best we could during the pandemic and the shutdown and everything like that. But, I think he's made a nothing short of a miracle in his recovery. For anybody else that I've met along the way, I think you get the best version of me as a PTA. I always thought I was a decent advocate, but I think that this stuff happening in our life has made me a better advocate. I'm a bigger believer in what we can do. I always knew that physical therapy was going to be the right route for me. I've never regretted a day of being a PTA or going into this field. But I really love what I do. And I work with people much like Chris, maybe different diagnosis or different things happening that have gotten them to being right in front of me or the other therapists that are on my team. But all in all, I've got a great team. We're the ones you go to when everybody else says no. I tell people that all the time. We are the people who will tell you yes when everybody else says no. Because I believe in trying, because of what we've been through. What Chris has had to overcome and push through, and just be pushy and advocate and push so hard. It's a lot of pushing. It is ridiculous how much pushing we have to do to get what is best for our patient. So that's kind of a short story, believe it or not. I know it's 18 minutes long. I'm not going to edit this because I don't believe in editing, so you can either skip through or whatever. Or if you got this far, you're like, oh, well, listen to the whole thing. But I appreciate you listening. That's basically the short story. That's the less rated R version. Is Chris went through a lot after getting run over. And he's worked his butt off to get to where he's at. I'm incredibly proud of him. Very, very proud of him. And he's always been my hero, but he's something else, that's for sure. So if you see us in the clinic, you see him in the clinic, you see us out somewhere, just know he's come a long way, and you're catching him on the path, on the way up. Things got real hard and real bad for a while, but we're getting there, and we won't stop trying, and it'll be a good day when we can walk into the hospital up in Flagstaff and maybe find the surgeon who laughed and said he would never walk again. That would be fun. Kind of stick it to you. We never know. We never know. We can never tell where you're going to be. Just keep trying, and find the right therapist. Find the right therapist that will believe in what you want and help you get to that goal. It might not look as pretty as it once was. It might not, be the same. You might have to modify the things, but do the things. You can do it. So, talk to y'all later. Love y'all. Bye.